Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Land Use and Building Management Committee of the Norwalk Common Council to order. It is now 7:01 on Wednesday, June 1st, 2022. With us tonight, we have Mr. Keegan, Mr. Hooverman, Ms. Smith, Ms. Ayers, Ms. Alterman, and myself, Tom Livingston. So we do have a quorum. Is there anyone signed up for public participation?
We currently have 3 attendees with 1 hand raised.
Okay, if you could have the person with the hand raised, let them speak, please.
Diane Lauricella, you are unmuted. You can speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and staff. My name is Diane Lauricella. You have a full agenda tonight, and it has a lot of important items that are near and dear to my heart that I've spoken about over the years. I will clip my comments, try to make them into a question. The first is item under new business, item 5B, as in Ben Franklin Center Gym. Wanted to see if before we throw that much money, $145,000 towards an air conditioning unit, wanted to see if there are other ways that we could make sure that we seal leaks of hot air into the building. The rooftop, is it white rooftop or black rooftop? There are many ways of reducing the need to cool buildings. And even though this is an old building, it seems like, has this building been reviewed by people that know a lot about renewable energy opportunities and efficiency of energy? Item 5C under the YMCA, I did review over the many years it's been on the books. We did discuss the potential, which there is, of solar panels to help reduce the YMCA's cost. I believe that, especially with the intentions of this council forming your ad hoc sustainability committee and all of your intentions that you have told me, let's start putting them into actual use and just make sure in the terms and conditions that solar panels are part of the mix. The building is ripe for solar energy on the rooftop, and I know they're going to be doing some roofing work. So I would love to see if that term update could be part of it. Item D, under the Wolf Pit, Roten, Fox Run, and Narromek schools, the long saga of removal of oil tanks, of course, is a good one. And as you know, I used to help regulate the leaks of oil tanks at the state. I wanted to know, number one, how many oil tanks are left to be removed? And number two, again, hearkening back to our intent for renewables and the like, the fact that the practice has been to switch automatically almost to fracked gas instead of looking at solar options is somewhat very disappointing. It seems like that is the model that Mr. Lowe and the schools are using, is pop out the oil tank, which is a good thing, but let's switch to gas, or let's build the infrastructure. Here, Eversource is putting it in for free. I wonder why. I think we could have taken a pause and planned in advance for no need for fossil fuels in some of these schools. I'm hoping one day we have that kind of thought. Lastly, I look forward to listening to number 4, the sustainability design and alternative energy options. I still remain concerned when the consultant you are using made sure that they stated the way they stated the alternative energy options that are viable. That means that they have discounted things like carport solar, probably, and ground mounted solar, probably. But I look forward to seeing that they have looked outside the box. And of course, the South Norwalk School is on as well. Lastly, I have never felt that even if a building is in a 100-year floodplain, because there was a statement in Nancy on Norwalk, I had asked many months ago, was this building in a floodplain? You can build buildings in anywhere, as we've seen off of Water Street. The question is, should you build using public funds and children trying to get to school if it is within the 100-year floodplain? I also hope that the public will be able to see the results of the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment so that they can be assured that any toxics that may or may not have been deposited or used on that property, they can feel that they, of course, have a very safe site. As some of you may know, that is one of my professional specialties. And yes, I do know that when a thorough phase 1 and 2 and 3 are done, you can often build very good buildings, safe buildings on that property. So I look forward to any of the discussion tonight, and thank you.
Tom, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Is there anybody else signed up to speak or raised their hand to speak?
No other attendees have raised their hand at this time.
Okay, does any member of the committee have any correspondence they'd like to add to the record? Seeing none, I will close public participation and move on to the approval of the minutes of the previous 2 meetings. I'll do them separately. First is the meeting of April 6, 2022. Do I have a motion? Ms. Ayers, thank you. Are there any comments, changes, revisions to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously. Second minutes are May 4th, 2022. To have a motion on those minutes. Mr. Hooverman, thank you. Any changes, corrections on that? Ms. Smith?
Yeah, thank you. One minor one on page 2 under old business. My name is spelled incorrectly. It should be SMYTH. It's spelled correctly everywhere else, so it's just
okay.
a typo. And then on page 4, in the middle, where it says Ms. Smith gave some more details about the use of natural light and how educational programming was built into the architectural designs. Really should read more like I commented that the architects considered natural lighting and programming in the designs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hooverman, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just on page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5, my name is spelled wrong. It's spelled correctly in the attendance, but it's spelled wrong throughout the document.
Okay. Any other corrections or changes? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes as corrected? 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Heidelman, Alterman, I'm sorry. Are you okay with this? Heidi? Okay, well, let's just have the minutes reflect that Ms. Alterman did not vote for this item, but the other 5 did. So they pass. All right, let's keep moving. Next item on the agenda is under old business, item 5A. This is review Norwalk Public Schools request for teaching material and refer the following to the Common Council for action. 1, authorize the purchasing agent to issue purchase orders to McGraw-Hill Publishing for Wonders resources for grades K through 5 student literacy text digital material for total not to exceed $155,000, account noted. 2, authorize the purchasing agent to issue purchase order to Saddleback Publishing for multilingual learners reading resources for total not to exceed $30,000, account noted. 3, authorize the purchasing agent to issue purchase order to Barnes & Noble for middle school multilingual learners reading resources for a total not to exceed $45,000, account noted. And 4, authorize a contingency allowance in the amount not to exceed $8,000 in the event of order adjustments, account noted. Do I have a motion? Ms. Smith, thank you. Alan, you're going to say something?
Excuse me. Before the committee and Rob present this item, I just wanted to, for public information, the Common Council here is to look to review the request to purchase education material, but our response, the council's and the committee's responsibility is limited to the process, not what to buy, not what to buy. That's the responsibility of Board of Education. So our responsibility is to make sure that it's the purchase under capital budget. So the city has the responsibility to oversee that there's a process that went through, the money used for the proper purpose rather than what books to buy. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us. Okay, Mr. Pennington, are you going to comment on this or?
So I have Stacy Bergen, our Educational Administrator for Curricular Professional Development, who's here, who's going to provide a quick overview.
Hi, good evening, members of the Common Council. My name is Stacy Bergen. I'm the Educational Administrator for Curricula and Professional Development for the City of Norwalk. I come to you requesting these funds because we, this year, post-pandemic, have restructured our literacy program in Norwalk. We knew that there would be a gap or learning loss, as they're coining it, for our students, and we know that we needed to be proactive instead of reactive. So we decided to change our program from a balanced literacy program to more of a structured literacy program, which enables our students to experience the 5 pillars of reading throughout the course of the day. When students are exposed to the 5 pillars of reading, they are able to become better readers at a much quicker rate. It closes that gap of learning loss, and it provides opportunities for students to engage with materials that are at or above their level. When we provide these materials for students, they are met with a level of success. And when students are met with a level of success, they are willing to sort of take risks in classrooms, and they are willing to put forth extra work and effort, and they're excited to go to school because they're seen as like winners rather than strugglers. This year, we're delighted to say that the data has shown an improvement in our levels of reading across grades K through 5. And we're working towards looking at our multilingual learners who make up a significant portion of our district. And what we need to do is provide them with more leveled resources so that they can also become engaged readers and writers. And in order to do that, we need to provide them with texts that they can use on a day-to-day basis. So the ask is for these 3 pieces. One is the McGraw-Hill piece, and the second piece between Saddleback and Barnes & Noble is to allow us to continue building our diverse libraries and to continue to provide materials that all students can use to better engage in the reading and writing process.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Ms. Smith.
A question, just, this is out of curiosity, because we have no say, of course, in terms of curriculum, but, just from being a former English teacher, I'm just curious, because I read an article just the other day about Lucy Calkins and the shift from, that style at the elementary level more back towards phonics. And I never taught elementary school, but I do know that, I had 3 children go through the school. So I'm just curious, is the district looking at that, like, incorporating more phonics at the elementary level?
Yes. So Ms. Smith, I myself was a high school English teacher for many, many years, right? And have children of my own as well. And so what we knew last year coming into the district is there had already been kind of this scuttlebutt around what was happening within balanced literacy. And, whenever the pendulum moves one way to the left or one way to the right, we always know that there are people who get caught in the middle, right? And so what we realized is that kids needed a more rounded or robust experience around literacy. And so we went back to sort of what we know and the neuroscience behind the science of reading, right? And looking at how the brain receives language, how we make meaning of language, and then how we then take those 2 things together to then produce language. And so we have, it was a much more heavy balanced literacy district, and we are now swinging that pendulum ever so slightly to move students move instruction to a point where they're experiencing all 5 pillars. So when we talk about the 5 pillars, we're talking about phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary development. And so a lot of time was spent previously on not teaching that phonics and phonemic awareness, but it's sort of like just giving your kids the key to the car and say, like, go drive, right? like we weren't giving them those foundational skills that they needed to become the best readers that they possibly could. And so we're taking sort of the best of what works in both of those areas, putting them together to create a more comprehensive reading program for the students of Norwalk.
Thank you that's a very comprehensive explanation and thorough. And I really, really appreciate that the district is paying such close attention to the science, the neuroscience. So thank you for that very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and indicate yes. 2, 3, 4. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Item B, review recommendation for the installation of air conditioning in the Ben Franklin Center Gym and refer the following to the Common Council for action. 1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with More Cooling and Heating, Inc. for the Ben Franklin Center Gym air conditioning installation project for a total not to exceed $145,100, account number noted. B, authorize the Office of Building Management to issue change orders on the contract for a total not to exceed $14,510. Do I have a motion? Motion to somebody? Mr. Keegan, thank you. Alan.
Ken is here tonight to present the item.
Oh, okay.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Ken.
So as you guys might know, Ben Franklin is really the only gymnasium that Rick Parks has unfettered access to that we're not sharing with the school. So it's a very important site for us. Currently, we have adult men's basketball there. We have youth fitty basketball. We have our Playmaker basketball, which is grades 3 to 8. We have our youth girls basketball, and then we also have a high school open gym. The biggest issue with Ben Franklin is the humidity during the summer months. Based on the type of flooring and the humidity in the gym, it makes the floor extremely slippery to the point where we have to cancel a lot of sessions because it's just dangerous. So, this AC is going to be a hit for us. We'll be able to use the building, unregulated throughout the summer months and help us to increase our programming that we currently have there.
That's great. When do you think this will happen, assuming it's approved?
Alan, you could probably speak better on the schedule.
I don't know the schedule, but I think it's unfortunately, it's going to be in the fall probably because currently the manufacturing supply chain is terrible. Control side is terrible too. So this is June already. So I think by the time we install it, it'll be during the fall.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Hoolman.
What I see the base amount and then the alternate. What does the alternate represent on these bids?
I'm staring at you, Alan.
Stare at me.
It shows a base amount of 138,600 and then add alternate 1. What was the alternate 1 that?
I don't know. I'll find out and I'll follow up email to you to the committee.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, could you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my staff told me, but it's been I just don't know.
I was wondering if it had to do with an increase in a compressor size or a ducting issue or something like that. So
no. One thing we're doing is that I think there's similar to the heat system. We actually have a button in there that when you need it, you press it. It's designed so that the equipment is all energy efficient. We will also put in that we can maintain a little higher temperature, not high enough that you create a humidity issue. At the same time is that we can maintain higher. You walk in the gym, you press the button, automatically, immediately you get air conditioning for, let's say, you get set for 2 hours. So if you don't have another program after, you go back to setback mode. So besides just keeping the building cool, we try to improve the energy consumption. Same thing with heat. You go in there, press the button, you get a 2 hour heat, and then we'll drop back to the like 62 degrees after that. Right?
okay, thanks.
I'll let you know tomorrow about what the alternate one was.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? 3, 4, 5, 6, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Ken.
Take care, you guys too.
All right, C, review updated terms for the development lease agreement with the YMCA for the 98 South Main Street building. Refer the following to the Common Council for action. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling to execute a lease agreement and all other necessary documents with the RiverBrook Regional Young Men's Christian Association, Inc. for the capital improvements, use, occupancy of the building, and continued maintenance, repair, improvement of the city-owned building located at 98 South Main Street. Terms of the lease agreement shall be as outlined in the lease term sheet in the memo prepared by Darren Callahan, Assistant Corporation Counsel, dated May 25th, 2022. Do I have a motion? Ms. Ayers, thank you. So with us tonight is Bob McDowell, who's Executive Director of the YMCA, RiverBrook YMCA, that is. Maybe we should start by taking the newer members through a history of this project. Alan, do you want to take us through that?
I think Darren could, if he doesn't, Darren and Bob, to go through the history and stuff. I think Darren wrote the memo, so it's I think he's more refreshed on the details.
Okay.
Yeah, good evening. The project is back before this body because it's changed a bit given what we went through with COVID and escalation in construction costs, and the YMCA has furthered its cost estimating, and so there's been just a rethinking and some revisions on some of the lease parameters. That being said, the vast majority remain relatively the same. In fact, if you did a side-by-side comparison, this memo to the previous one, 90% or more would look very similar. Just in broad brush, what's changed here is the minimum budget went from $4 million for the renovation project to $7 million. So the YMCA is taking on additional financial obligation as part of this project, given that the cost estimating is much higher. The city is proposing to add an additional $1 million into the project that would be reimbursed it would be fronted essentially to get the construction completed, and then it would be returned to the city in the form of additional rent over a period of 25 years to further facilitate some of the unexpected and quite frankly substantial increases in construction costs. Those are two of the main areas in where this agreement has shifted. The rest is more, I would say, legalese in nature, but those are the substantive changes in my view.
So just quickly summarize. So the council did approve a lease agreement with the Y, 3 years ago, Darren?
Yeah, it was close to 3 years ago now.
Right.
December, or I think it was January of 2020. It was really shortly before COVID lockdown.
Yeah. Then COVID kicked in, and then cost escalations kicked in, and that's how we are where we are today.
Yeah.
Bob, do you want to comment?
I just want to add that since COVID, we actually did two interim license agreement so that the Y can operate some programs, other program in the facility. The city is currently paying for the utility costs, and they just running program from there. I think that's all I have to add.
Okay, Ms. Ayers, before Bob goes, you want to go?
Thank you, Chairman Livingston. My question is the lease for 25 years since the reimbursement is for 25 years, or what is the length of the lease?
The lease is a 30-year lease, and it has two 10-year options to extend in favor of the tenant on the YMCA. So in theory, it's a 50-year lease if the options are exercised. The 25-year period was selected because the additional money is essentially going towards paying for the HVAC enhancement in the roof, which are being constructed, you know, it's being constructed, you know, in a manner that you would want to construct something for, you know, long-term use. And so it's a significant enhancement, from what I understand, to the current HVAC system and roof that exists. It's not a one-for-one replacement, so it's more costly than otherwise would be. So we looked at it, and Alan and I discussed it, and we felt 25 years was consistent with the useful life, perhaps maybe a little shorter, but we are kicking an additional $1 million. So that's where we landed.
So my follow-up question, I guess, Darian, is what if at some point the lease is broken and the Y decides that they don't want to run services in there anymore? How does the city re-up their money?
So that's why it's listed as additional rent, or identified as additional rent. So it's an obligation that continues to remain consistent with any other lease. Typically on a commercial lease, it's a triple net lease. You have a base rent, and then you'll have like add-ons that'll be under the category of additional rent. Tenant breaks the lease, they're on the hook for, you know, the balance of the rental obligations, whether it's base or additional, through the duration of the lease. Absent some argument like obligation to mitigate, but in circumstances with municipality.
Let me try to answer this question also too. I think the project roughly, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, we talk about $7 million, $4 million. At the end of the day, it's probably $9 million plus. So this is a city building. The city is putting, initially, we had committed $1.2 million. And with this updated terms, the city is looking to contribute another $1 million as a loan basis for 25 years based on the depreciated value of mechanical system and roofing system. So typically, these systems last about 25 years. If you take care really well, it may last a little longer, but 25 is generally speaking the life of the equipment. That's why we want to depreciate the equipment in 25 years. If for some reason the Y, for good reason that, that didn't work out kind of thing, it's still a city building. So they would have, from private fundraising and other state or potential federal dollars that go into it, the city would have the assets stay with the building. So it's not a loss on the city part because they can't. I don't believe there's any terms in there that would allow the Y to take any money back. Once they contribute, it's fixed. It becomes city assets in terms of real property. So for a building like this, we're going to invest to combine as a partnership. The Y and the city is going to put in probably more than $9 million, and that would stay with the city. So it's not a loss from the city perspective. If for some reason they go for 10, 15 years, decide to end the relationship, we still continue to own the assets and the money that we put into the building. Am I correct, Darren?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's a fixture of the building that the tenant can't remove.
No, I don't think that they're going to take the HVAC system with them. That's not what my question was. That was not my concern.
Oh, okay.
That was not my concern. I mean, my concern really was because the city does own that space. Things happen, business happen. COVID has taught us that things shift. If there has been a shift in whoever the renter is, what is our responsibility as the city, and how are we going to get our money back? That was really what my question was, not if they're going to take the air conditioning system with them on a flatbed. That was not my concern.
Yeah, well, so then it's the first part of the answer, which I gave, which is why we categorize it as rent. The reimbursement as rent is because it's a ongoing obligation, and if the lease ends early because of a breach, an early exit, it remains an obligation that needs to be paid.
Okay.
Al's shaking his head, so I think he agrees.
Yeah. Ms. Ayers, are you good right now? Great. All right, Bob, do you want to just give a little color from your side?
Sure, yeah, and thank you, Chairman Livingston, and thank you, the committee members. Darren and Alan, we're still here. We are plowing through this, and we really very much appreciate the dialogue that we've had leading up to this with Corporation Counsel, with Darren and others who have been involved in some conversations with us. It's been a challenging time, as we've all known. The escalation in cost were not something we were banking on. But we continue to move forward with our architect through the schematic phase. We're pretty much at the final schematic phase, just working with a couple of the other agencies, which was the Norwalk Housing Authority and also AmeriCares in their fit out of their spaces to finalize those areas. We continue to work on our fundraising. And we are looking forward to signing this lease agreement. Our board is postured to do that, and based upon this approval here, we will be able to do that within days, we hope. But thank you.
I keep putting on mute because of the rain here. I don't hear that. Any further questions? Mr. Hillman.
I'm reading in here the budget funding deadline. What is the budget funding deadline on this, based on this agreement?
Steve, it's in my memo. I want to say it's beginning of 23 is when they have to have their funding in place, and I'm just going to try to grab it out here. Yeah, it looks like January 31st of 2023.
Right.
And then where are you at right now, Bob? Where is the YMCA at on that budget funding? Because I know you've been doing some fundraising, and you've been
we're about a third of the way there now, and we feel we'll be able to fulfill that obligation by the end of January.
And that puts you on track at that. You feel you're on track right now.
That's correct. Yes.
The next question I have is, when I look in the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, that's going to kick off when? When does that actually start? I know you've done some programming, you've done some summer programming, some other things right now because of COVID, and we've done the extensions on the licensing agreement. But when are these the sort of full thrust programming going to kick off?
Right. We'll be able to program in full thrust once we get our situation with our construction under the way. It'll take approximately 8 months. So we would expect by the end of 2023 at this point to have full thrust in. We're offering some summer programs now. We've offered some fitness programs. We've really worked with P2P of late, and that's pretty much done now for the summer. They need us again, but that'll be the time.
And where are you at with the architectural designs for the renovation work?
We're about ready to approve schematics, but we're just waiting on some AmeriCare's discussion. I'm meeting with their board president next 2 weeks, but we're almost getting ready to move into our design development phase.
And when do you think you're going to actually start construction?
Winter of 2023, January or February.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dan.
You're mute, Tom.
I saw you waving. Go ahead.
In talking to Darren today, we felt that this is a long-term lease agreement, 30-year plus 2 10-year options. We would like to, instead of taking action tonight, I want to request the committee to table this action to next month. Meanwhile, we hold a public hearing, scheduled public hearing for next land use meeting in July. At the same time, is that the $1 million that the city is looking to commit, we also have to go through a process to approve the money. So either way, it's going to, originally I put this on the agenda because I was trying to get everything done by June, so that beginning of July 1st, we can hand over the building. But because of the additional $1 million loan money, still needs approval process, go board estimates. So it's going to take generally speaking, another month. So meanwhile, since we have that month anyway, so we would like to hold schedule a public hearing for next land use meeting and table this action for now, and then we'll come back land use, go through it, and at the same time, the money will go through its process, and then come to the common council together in July.
All right, then I'm going to make a motion to table this item till the next land use meeting.
And also, if you don't mind, schedule a public hearing.
Well, I think there's separate items.
Oh, separate, okay.
Yeah. So all in favor of tabling the item till next meeting? Okay, unanimous. And so now I'll make a motion to send this to public hearing at the next regularly scheduled meeting of this committee, which I believe is July 5th. All right, so all in favor of a public hearing? Tom, you're going to miss it. All right, unanimous. Okay, so then I think that's it for this item. Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate all the work you guys have put into it. Looking forward to continue to work together.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, committee. Good night.
All right, good night. All right, moving right along to school projects. Item D1, review Norwalk Public Schools request from fuel tank replacement project, refer the following recommendation to the Common Council for action. A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Old Colony Construction LLC for the Wolf Pit Elementary School oil tank removal project. State project noted. Roten Middle School oil tank removal project, state project noted. Fox Run Elementary School oil tank removal project, state project noted. And Narragansett Elementary School oil tank removal project, state project noted, for a total not to exceed $671,400, account noted. And B, authorize the MPS Facilities Department to issue change orders in this contract for a total of $67,140, account noted. Do I have a motion? Anyone? Mr. Keegan first. Thank you. Mr. Hodel.
Yes, good evening and thank you. So what we have here is something I've brought to this committee in the past in terms of filing for a state application for a grant reimbursement. That was approved. We have the grant reimbursement for this project. These 4 schools here, the 3 elementary and 1 middle school, involve locations that are getting natural gas from Eversource at no cost to the district. So initially, as I mentioned in our last committee meeting, these schools were supposed to get above ground oil storage tanks as opposed to gas, now that Eversource had made that available to us. So there was a shift in the process. We put it out to bid for these 4 schools only. And we are able to get a Old Colony Construction that are very, have a lot of experience in this field. Their resume is vast. They do multiple state projects, including state highway projects and schools as well. We feel they are the most qualified and they can certainly meet the schedule that we are looking for. 2 of these schools already have the gas run from Eversource. We had a bit of a challenge in the middle school, but we overcame that challenge. The elementary school was complete. The remaining 2 schools to get the gas pipe run will be Narragansett and Wolf Pit. That will be taking place in the next couple of weeks, where that will start, and then thereafter, Old Colony is expected to come in, remove the underground oil storage tanks, retrofit the boilers with a gas burner, and remove the oil burner. So that's what we have in front of you tonight, and we hope that Old Colony is accepted, that we can award them this contract.
So Bill, a couple of questions. One, to Ms. Loricello, is how many schools are left to convert?
All right, so we are doing 4 more. So this season we will be doing 8. 4 are in front of you. The other 4 are Rowayton, Silver Mine, Nathan Hale, and I think it's Tracy. So by the upcoming heating season, we will have 8 tanks pulled out of the ground. How many more are left? There are 4 left, 1 at each high school. one at Columbus and Trace. I forget the other school. It wasn't Tracy. It was another elementary school. So we have a total of 12, 8 of which will be removed in the next upcoming months.
Was it Cranberry?
Oh, that's it, Cranberry. That's
Yeah,
part of
which
the
we're doing as part of our
construction
project.
Right.
So we'll run
Yes.
that for one more season.
Right.
It is Cranberry, correct.
So one thing I just want to note, and you alluded to this with the middle school reference. When they put in the gas lines, I think there has to be more coordination with Parks and Rec and the sports programs. Broughton turned out to be a disaster for the programs. They had to cancel a number of programs there because of the cutting into the lines, and still the field is not quite usable. So can you assure us that that's not going to happen to any of these other buildings?
Yes, I can. And we've already, since that experience, we have already vetted the remaining schools through all stakeholders. The issue at Broughton was it wasn't shared amongst the stakeholders where it should have been. So that was an oversight. So the remaining schools do not have any play fields per se. They're coming through front lawns and through blacktop on the driveway.
Okay.
But yes, lessons learned at Broughton.
Good. Any other discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Okay, let's move on. Item 2, school construction projects update. Jim, this is you.
All right, thank you. While we're going through the update, can we move Adam Ducky and Paul Dominoff from attendees to panelists? And thank you. And Mike, do you want to start off, please? Your projects. The first one that we have for update is Jefferson.
Good evening, everyone. At Jefferson right now, the building's basically in the final phase of construction. All the final finishes are being put in various small areas. The majority of the flooring, as you can see from the photos, those are a couple photos from the corridor. So, the contractors have worked by installing all of the flooring in the large areas, the classrooms, the cafeteria, the gymnasium floor is complete, and they're working their way into the corridors, and they'll be working their way out of the building. The final cleaners have begun in the building to get the building ready for turnover. So all the floors are being cleaned, the windowsills are being dusted, and all of the cabinetry and casework is being final cleaned. So it'll be nice and shiny for when the school moves in for the next school year. With regards to the site, if you've been by the site recently, the site's been completely hydro-seeded at this point, and all of the final landscaping has been installed. And really that just leaves the playground installations, which I was there this week and they've begun that. They started the lower grades playground at the front of the building, and they're working their way up to the top of the building where they'll be installing the playground for the upper grades. Also, line striping in the parking lots has been completed, and the final gates have been installed on both the bus loop and the visitor parking lot. The furniture delivery is still on schedule. We're looking to, the first furniture delivery will begin mid-June, and we'll be running through around mid-July. All of the contractors that'll be delivering the furniture I've been in touch with all of them, and we're still looking really good to have all that furniture delivered and assembled.
I just want to note before you move on that some of us went on a tour of the building, and it's really quite remarkable. The transition, particularly from the old Jefferson to this, is night and day, and you wouldn't even recognize it. So good job for all. Looks great.
Thank you.
Chairman Livingston, can I just ask a question? Have we ever done, or has the school district ever done an open house that with a construction project like this, sort of show off to the public the work that's been done? I've had a number of people ask me about that.
We probably haven't done a new school except for Ponus.
Yeah,
Alan,
we haven't built a school in a while, so that might be why we haven't. But
Yeah, I think that invitation goes out when we have like similar to the Jefferson School tour. It's actually we go to the facility committee of the Board of Education almost every month. So they are aware of what's going on, and the tour that we did for Jefferson is actually was intended to be a joint tour between Board of Ed members as well as council members. But we typically do not invite public. The reason being is that it's still a construction site, so we want to be able to like a better word, manage the people walking through, because it's there are construction activity going on and stuff like tripping hazards and stuff like that. So we only want to manage a small crowd, maybe 10 to 15 is probably what we want to do. So generally speaking, we do not, and we actually do. Mike, correct me if wrong. I think we took teachers through one time, right?
Yeah. The teachers were brought through very, very early in the construction. Actually, right after we had taken down a lot of the interior walls, so it was pretty dramatic for them to see it as well. Just from what it was to basically, you could look from one end of the building to the other.
all right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to Cranberry, Mike.
Yeah. So the construction management company is now mobilized the site. So the photo to the right that you're looking at is actually the old Cranberry field, if anyone's been up there. So all of the grass and topsoil has been removed and pushed off to the side of the site, and they're working on new building foundations. Right now, we're currently working with all the utility companies that are providing service to the building, power, water, data, and phone lines, to ensure that we get the new temporary lines brought into the building so that the existing Cranberry School can function as it does currently, and then also facilitate the construction. If you're familiar with the site, basically there's a bunch of power that runs from Grumman Avenue, basically just to the side of the old Cranberry field where the new school is going. And those lines would have interfered with the construction of the building as we moved on. Heavy equipment's going to be working in that area. There'll be a crane that'll be erecting steel, and concrete trucks and a concrete pump, and just the configuration of the wires, the way they were, just would have interfered with the construction as we needed it to go to build the new building. So we're working with Eversource right now to bring the new power lines in, First District Water to bring a new water line into the new building, as well as refeed the existing building, and then a digital back office who provides the fiber connection, and Frontier who provides the phone connection to the building. So over the summer, there'll be a few shutdowns that'll need to happen where we can tie over the new temporary lines to the existing building, and then we'll leave the new services close to the building and then tie them in at the appropriate time when the construction advances.
All right, thanks, Mike. Any questions on Cranberry?
Yeah, just what do you hope to have to get done this summer?
Basically, the building, they're going to have all the foundations in, the steel will be going up, and the exterior walls will be pretty well underway by the end of the summer.
So the steel will all be up, the structure?
That's the plan right now.
Great. Good.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Moving on, we are on schedule with the project. Moving on to Norwalk High School. Dan, you up for giving the update?
Yeah, I'll take it over. Good evening, everyone. As we talked last month, the project is currently in schematic design phase. That'll run through the beginning of July. Part of this effort is reaching out to all the stakeholders in the project that will have involvement in the future. So we've been working through Sandra to coordinate meetings over the last month, 1 or 2 meetings a week. Those are continuing into June. A couple of notable meetings that we had recently and have on the schedule for the next couple of weeks. We just met with the Transportation, Mobility, and Parking Department. This effort was to review the site plan, the internal circulation, and make sure that all of our logistics for bus drop off and pick off are coordinated with the city. Also, we continue to meet with the athletic director and recreation and parks department for sports related programs and the facilities. We're meeting with them tomorrow to review the pool area and the support areas associated with that, to continue with that design. Also, as part of our early coordination efforts, we've reached out to the building department and have a meeting scheduled for the 7th. In this meeting, we'll review the project plans, address any concerns they may have with the initial review. And during this meeting, we also invited police and fire to provide feedback at the same time. The last item on here, since we do have some activities coming up next week, with the geotechnical borings will be taken starting on the 6th through the 10th. The administration at the high school has been notified of this work, and this is to confirm the existing earth conditions so that we can finalize our engineering for the foundations related to the project.
Dan, right now we are schematic phase. When do we intend to finish that, and when is the scheduled meeting with the state?
I don't have that.
Oh.
I think it's middle of July. It's that we're supposed to finish up the schematic design phase that rolls right into the first week of July. And I want to say that meeting's it's in the middle of July, 17th.
I think it's July 20th, and the
20th.
Schematic design will go to the CM at on the 17th of June.
Yep. Any other questions regarding Norwalk High School? Okay.
Yeah, can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
You know, I know that the staff was very much a part of the initial discussions and the initial design that was, done on the field. And now that it's been moved up to, the football field area, has the staff continued to be involved in those discussions in terms, I remember asking this question when we were first looking at option A, option B. There's much less square footage in this plan. And so, and I had asked the question about, is that going to affect programming space? And was told at the time that, it would really not, because what you're really losing is like those big long hallways that exist currently in Norwalk High. So I'm just curious if, the staff is involved in the discussions with this new design.
Yes, they have been. We've completed, I think it's our third or fourth meeting this morning with staff members. We're breaking them up by discipline, history, English, math, science. This morning, I think, oh my gosh, I forgot.
Performing arts and music.
Thank you. So yes, we are meeting with the staff. We're reviewing the plans. We're listening to their comments. So yes, they have been involved.
Right, awesome.
And are continuing to be involved. We still have, I think, 2 to 3 more meetings with staff members moving forward.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Jim, this is Alan. Can you be a little more specific? I'm not trying to give you a hard time or anything. When you say staff, is this administrative staff or management staff at the high school, or teachers?
Teachers. We met with admin, I think it was last week. We met with, again, visual and performing arts this week, or this morning. I forget who we have next week. Scott, if you know.
It's visual arts. It is the art teacher.
Okay. We had performing arts this morning.
Correct.
Okay. So yes, it is those teachers that we are meeting with.
Excellent. Thank you.
Ms. Ayers?
Thank you. This is almost a follow-up to what Councilperson Barbara Smith said. I know you're meeting with teachers in clusters, But I do not hear you say, and I've asked this previously, for you please to meet with the security team, because those people have to secure that building. And their input should be highly favored and listened to in the structure of what that building is supposed to look like. As a person who is constantly in Norwalk High, our current building is a building that is very hard to secure. I would really like, and now I'm being a little bit more forceful, because the last couple of months I did it with a smile and nothing has gotten done. I really would like you to meet with the security team at Norwalk High and get their input on this building so that they are allowed to see what this is going to look like and they can have an open conversation before the schematics is done. I don't understand why we keep skipping over safety.
No,
and at this point, I'm very irritated because I've asked several times.
understood. And please understand, we are scheduling a meeting with police and fire, and we will as well with the security team.
Jim, we have met with the security director.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, because when I asked, they said no. And I'll go in there tomorrow and call a name. The security director, but you can, I mean, you can communicate with that. You can communicate with that to me through Alan offline. I don't have a problem. But again, I really have to emphasize that the people who work in the building, the security director can be at central office. The people who work in the building in regards to security need to look at this layout of this building to see if this is something that they could secure. And I'd rather their input be put in now than we wait till we erect the building and figure out we have all these issues. Again, the security director may not be in that building every day. And if you're meeting with teachers who walk in that building every day, I think it's reasonable to ask for you to meet with the security team that works inside the building every day. My second part of the my question is, last month meeting, I think it was last month or the month before, I asked how much of this building or the construction of this building would be green. I was told to wait to this month, but I did not hear that in the overview.
No, we do have a presentation after this general overview.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim, just quickly, I can offer up two names that head up the security at Norwalk High, Scotty Nails and Tim Williams. I can give you more details later.
All right.
No, I know both of them. I can text them now. I'll call them. Thank you.
Yeah, and Bill, if you can send me their email address if you have it, that would be great.
I will.
Thank you.
Because I spoke with both of them and neither one of them has, so there's some communication that's not happening, but I will follow up with both of them.
Yeah, they're good guys and they'll give you some good helpful hints. So I agree.
Okay, very good.
That.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you.
Any other?
Mr. Hulman? Nicole, you're done? Great. Mr. Hulman?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman Livingston. Just two quick questions. One, where are we at with the timeline on this? When are we looking at being able to actually break ground?
Currently, it's scheduled for December of 2023.
And we think we're on track for that?
Right now we are, yes.
Okay. And I noticed it still says current project budget 225 million. I thought the state approved an increase, or am I wrong on that?
They improved through special legislation a total project budget of 239 million. However, we are trying to hold to our original budget of 225 million.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any further discussion there? Okay, Jim, keep going. Yeah.
Okay, very good. We'll move on. We are on schedule. We'll move on to the South Norwalk School. Dan?
At South Norwalk School, this month, we are submitting the grant application for reimbursement on the Sono School. That's due by the 30th of this month. We're just collecting the last couple documents, one of which is related to the purchase of the property. And the latest news on the job, on the project, is that the city has reached an agreement with the current owner at 1 Meadow Street Extension to purchase the property for $14 million. And this is on the agenda for approval for the final step of this acquisition. That's
Okay.
all we have of Norwalk.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah, and with once the grant application has been submitted, we will start moving forward with architect selection in the summer, as well as construction management selection about a month after the architect RFP is issued. That's our typical timeframe for moving forward on a project.
And I just want to note correction on this, the budget number. Currently, it's actually $72 million. As part of review and discussion tonight, it's we are going for a special appropriation to put another $4 million in it. So the final, subject to the approval of the additional money, would be a $76 million project.
We got ahead of ourselves. I'm sorry, Alan.
Ms. Ayers?
Any other questions?
Yeah,
I
Ms. Ayers.
do. Excuse me, Jim.
Yes.
I know in other school construction, you have allowed either the SGCs or the parent community to look at the, I don't know what the right word is, the drawings, the pictures. I don't know what the right word is. Once the architect has done this, because this is a brand new school that does not have that body already established. What is your plan on allowing the community or the parents of the kids that might be attending the school to see what the school will look like?
Well, we haven't finalized that. We will work with Norwalk Public Schools to get the word out and publicize the project once we get more information and once we understand what it's going to look like, once we select an architect.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Real quick before you move on Cranberry, I got a little bit ahead of myself as well. Tom, just to answer your question about the schedule, but by the beginning of the early fall, the steel will be going up. It's mainly foundations and enabling work, meaning the utility infrastructure. They are moving very quickly, though.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Any other?
Is that it, Jim?
That's it.
Okay, so let's go on to the South Norwalk School. And item 3, review proposed development of a new South Norwalk neighborhood school and for recommendation to the Common Council for action, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all agreements and other documents necessary to purchase and acquire 1 Meadow Street Extension, Norwalk, Connecticut, identified in the tax assessor records as map block and lot number 2-75-71-0 from the Hatch and Bailey Company in an amount of $14 million, subject to standard closing adjustments. And B, authorized to increase special capital appropriation, the amount of $4.0 million for the new South Norwalk Sono Elementary School project for revised total project budget of $76 million, account noted. I'll let Alan or Darren probably just talk through where we are. I think we've discussed
the item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, good point. Mr. Hooverman may raise it. Actually, Mr. Keegan, let you move it. Yeah, so I think we all know the history of this project. We've been discussing it for a while. We now have an agreement in front of us to approve the purchase or entering into the purchase agreement with the Hatch and Bailey Company. So I will let Darren, or you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Councilman Livingston. So we've been in discussions with the owners of 1 Meadow Street Extension, which is the Hatch and Bailey Company, between their principals and their council for some time now. We're closing in on really what I would call the fine detail, the legalese of a purchase agreement. 99% of the way there on it, and I expect that will be resolved in the next day or two.
Actually, Alan, Darren, I'm gonna stop you right there. Are there any showstoppers in that 1%?
No, I don't see any showstoppers. It's a typical real estate closing, and there's things that need to be loops that need to be closed in the process, but nothing that won't work itself out.
Okay.
So, but I did want to provide the basic parameters of the deal. So those are attached to the agenda. There's a term sheet, unless someone wants me to go through it. It's there. It's at page 34 through 35 of the agenda backup. And I do, the deal is pretty straightforward because there's no financing or conventional financing. It's a cash deal. The city's going to fund it. Doesn't need to go to outside financing. The due diligence is, quite limited in comparison to other commercial closings because the buildings are going to be raised as part of the new construction project. So, from in many perspectives, the deal is simplified from that perspective. But obviously, the big item of due diligence that needed to be done and was done was an environmental review that commenced a while ago now with a phase 1 analysis, and was supplemented by a phase 2 analysis that was conducted by Libero Engineering Group, which is a highly respected firm. We were our representative was Kevin Bitchman, Kevin B. I can't pronounce his last name, with Libero. He's a certified LEP, and well known in the environmental community. We also brought aboard Ann Catino, who's here with us tonight from Halloran Sage, as our outside environmental counsel. So we really established a strong team to perform our due diligence in conjunction with myself, Mr. Lowe, and Mr. Giuliano. That process has now been completed. We have a final report. It's just backing up slightly. I do want to emphasize before I get to the issue of the report that we took a very conservative approach to this due diligence. We were keenly aware, and our representatives were made acutely aware that a school was going here and it needed to be an appropriate place to locate a school. Ground, soil, and water samples were taken, and those samplings were done as indicated by the phase 1 report, which is standard protocol. As I mentioned a second ago, we did receive the final report. I'm not a subject matter expert in this. That's why I brought in Ann and Kevin, which I will turn over the floor to questions for Ann shortly. But I would summarize it as we were very pleased with the results of the phase 2. I think one of our representatives might even said shockingly surprised how good the results came back. And I guess what I would say is, in more basic terms, that the property is entirely within manageable limits to put a school there from an environmental perspective. That was indicated through conversations that both Alan and I had with Ann and Kevin, Ann from Halloran and Kevin from Libero. So I won't take up any more time on that. We have a subject matter expert here, which is Attorney Ann Catino, and she is available and ready, prepared to answer any questions that this council may have.
Ms. Catino, do you want to add anything particular? Make any comments?
I can say a couple things. First, I want to underscore that the city did take a very conservative approach looking and evaluating the property. We had early on had a phase 1 environmental site assessment performed, and the question was raised whether or not the transfer of the property by Hatch and Bailey to the city would constitute or trigger what's called the Connecticut Transfer Act, which applies depending upon the amount of hazardous waste that's generated on a site or the nature of the activities that were conducted. The conclusion that we drew was it does not fall within the Transfer Act. Now, recently, there was a building that was torn down by Hatch and Bailey, and they generated hazardous waste. a few years ago, the legislature, Connecticut General Assembly, passed a bill that allows for, I'll call a one-time exemption from the Transfer Act. If you generate hazardous waste above the 100 kilograms of hazardous waste in any 1 month, you are exempt if you've done it on a one-time basis. And hygienics, the first consultant looked at it, Lorero looked at it, I looked at it, and the site does not qualify as an establishment. So neither party has to certify to DEP that they'll be responsible for investigating or remediating the property. Having said that, and part of the conservatism that the city took is, and Lorero, under the instruction of the city, took, was even though when the transfer will not be in the Transfer Act, and what's called the remediation standard regulations would not necessarily apply, the phase 2 work that Lorero did presumed that the remediation standard regulations would apply. And they followed what's called the site characterization guidance document. They compared the sample results to the RSR's remediation standard regulations, and the sample results came back extremely well. It doesn't appear as if there were any releases associated with the historic operations of the property, either as a full service lumber yard, hardware store, cement block manufacturer, ice manufacturing facility. It doesn't look like there were any releases associated with those former activities or the present day Hatch and Bailey activities. Any constituents that were detected appear to be naturally occurring heavy metals, which are all manageable during site development. Those will be subject to further investigation, but as part of very normal and natural site development activities. These heavy metals exist throughout the entire state. They are at very low concentrations too, compared to the RSR. So the results of the results look good. The results definitely look good, and that the site is appropriate for a school. I've worked on a lot of school sites, and this is stunning in how good it is for purposes of a school, given its history.
It's good to hear that. Questions on the environmental side? I want to just something that came up with in the caucus actually about the importance of this as a community school and making it a community school, and one of that being walkability. And I've confirmed with the mayor's office that they have designated $1.5 million for sidewalks in the area. Alan had put aside $750 before, and that's been bumped up just to make sure there's money that we need. So that's good news. And Mr. Kleppen is also looking at this in terms of the rezoning of the area. And he has, I don't know if people have seen that, but this was previously considered what I-1, Alan, and it's now going to be the whole area.
Light industrial one.
Light industrial, okay, and this area, this block, if you will be redesignated as a residential. I'm not sure what the category is, but so that's positive steps. Questions? Mr.
Just very quick. I'm sorry, it's not a question. I can't ask myself a question. Just want to let everybody know, the two items presented to you tonight, it's one is approving the acquisition of property, the other is increase of funding. Both items are being sent to the Planning and Zoning Commission for tomorrow night. This PNC is required under state statute 8-24 to review the acquisition of property, and separately for the approval of the funding. In conversation with Councilman Livingston, we're looking to schedule a special meeting of Common Council on next Monday, on June 6th, for a special council meeting to approve these items. The reason being is that we have the June 30th deadline, and there's a number of things we still need to do in terms of process-wise, and also there's executing the sale contracts require 10-day waiting time, I believe, if I'm 7-10 days. So when you add it all together, to meet the deadline, so a special council meeting is requested for next Monday. So I just want to let you know the schedule moving forward the next few days.
Yeah, on that point, does anybody care, since we're the ones talking about it first, 7:30 or 7? Is it easier, David?
7:30.
7.
The mayor, I'm sorry, the mayor has a point estimate meeting at 6:30.
No, the mayor's not going to be here. He's got a council of mayors.
Okay.
Well, we got a 7 and 7:30, so is.
I can't make 7:30. I mean, I can't make 7. I wouldn't be able to make 7 o'clock.
I'm going to my last official act and act at 7:30.
7:30. Okay, David.
Yeah, I'm at a band banquet that night. I'm gonna have to sneak off into a dark closet somewhere to do the meeting.
Well, okay, David, you can be able to live with 7:30.
Yeah, I mean, I may have to bounce early. That's all.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, unanimous. Thank you very much. And Alan, thank you for really working hard and shepherding this through to where we are today. Really appreciate all your work.
And Darren.
And Darren too. But you've been working on it longer than anybody, so.
I agree. And I'd just like to comment too. Thank you so much, Alan. It took such a lot of effort and hard work on your part and Darren and how many times you've gone to the state, trying to make the school happen. So I just would like to let you know how much I appreciate it.
We all appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Let's get into some design. A design presentation on the status of Norwalk High School and building sustainability design and alternative energy options. Okay, Alan, we'll turn this over to.
Yeah, this is following for a conversation last month. I mean, it is typically we do not bring all these projects to back to land use that often, but but this project is a substantial project. It's very impactful for the entire community, more than just a local elementary school. So, following our conversation last week, I think my plan is to do not so much formal presentation, but more of a periodic updating to more than just a monthly update. But a little more detail into where we are and how we're moving forward and things like that. So with that, I think this presentation is 2 parts. One is the project in terms of design and layout and things like that for maybe 10 minutes. I think about 20 minutes of the energy piece that we promised the presentation, and based on the engineer's evaluation of all the options available, what works, what doesn't work, why, and how we're looking to move forward. So with that, I have Scott and Scott, Paul, and Adam here tonight. So, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Good evening, everyone. Share my screen. All right, everybody see that?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll just, as Alan mentioned, I will just go through the building information, the site information, the project quickly for you, and then hand it over to Adam Dukey. He is our engineer, and he'll go over the alternate energy. So the floor plan, the site plan, you have basically the 2 main entrances are going to continue off of County, and you also have that ancillary currently off of Strawberry Hill Avenue. They will be maintained, and they will be the only access into the site. They empty into the large parking lot, which is basically where the existing parking lot is today. As we talked about previously, you do have the flip with the building being on the field in the south, and of course the fields moving up towards where the existing softball and existing building is on the north. You do have the synthetic fields, softball and a soccer field on the west side, and on the east side we have some tiered tennis courts because of the grade change of 25 to 30 feet. So each grouping of tennis courts is just tiered. The building itself has an access road that goes around. At the moment, it is for receiving, which is on the east side of the building. There's a little bit of parking, a bit on the King Street side and on the west side near the Merrimack Elementary School. The buses are intended to go around the school, and we have a bus drop off with this little V on the west side here. And they're intended to continue out to Strawberry, but we're having continuing conversations with the traffic engineer and traffic people to decide what is best. We're having conversations in terms of the traffic engineer has some parking, has some traffic counts, and we're going to be getting together in the near future to discuss that. Moving on into the building, there are generally two main entries into the building. From the north parking lot, you have the main entry, and we talked about the bus from the west side. There is also an ancillary entry, if you will, off on the west side where you have the pool entry and the gymnasium entry for maybe after-hour activities. You can also get to the performing arts area, specifically the theater there. Going into the floor plan, Norwalk High School is on the right-hand side. That's a 4-story structure. P-Tech Norwalk is a 3-story structure on the west side. There's classrooms on both sides, and with the new design, we're able to kind of have a center core, if you will, with elevators, toilets, storage rooms, teacher planning, and they're generally all the same floor to floor. That also occurs on the P-Tech. As you do enter the building, you do have the Norwalk administration right up front, and you also have the P-Tech Norwalk administration on the left side. Coming down, you have an area of commons. This is really the cafeteria. You can see the kitchen in a bit of the darker gray over here, coming into the servery and the back kitchen, and the lighter gray in the back of that is the mechanical and custodial locker rooms for the food and custodial staff. Below all of the educational and the commons, you have the athletic facility part of the building, where you have the gymnasium on the west side with the support spaces of the locker room next to that. The auditorium is a little bit inboard off of the commons. And you also have the support spaces of bands and choral, and the music suite below that. And you also have the natatorium, which includes the pool and the locker rooms. Again, there's an entrance on the west side that sort of goes into after hours, be able to either have the flexibility. We've been talking about flexibility where people can come in and they can do just use the pool. But if you wanted to open up a little bit more, there's actually a mezzanine area. And to be able to use the mezzanine, you kind of have a little bit of access to the upper level that we'll get to in a minute. Actually, we'll go to right now. So the mezzanine of the pool is over here. The capacity is about 200 people for a total capacity for the pool. You also have the upper gymnasium, and we talked about the upper access. It kind of has a ring road, if you will, around the gymnasium with access to the auxiliary gym, and you have ROTC, and you also have the upper mezzanine. The P-Tech Norwalk and Norwalk High School, again, they're just sort of identical floor to floor with various spaces. You do have the counselor's suite up here. And you also have the media center on the second level. Getting up to third, you do have a connection between the P-Tech Norwalk and Norwalk High School. And basically it's connected with the visual arts. And we do show sort of a green space that's anticipated to be a rooftop learning space. And we kind of identified that. We'll be working through a little bit more what that exactly entails. There has been talk previously about some outdoor spaces, which also includes a rooftop space. And then just on the fourth level is just only the Norwalk High School. And here we're just
Scott, I just want to add something, that the way it's laid out right now is that we're respecting King Street's neighborhood scale. And therefore, we're keeping all the gyms and all the facility on the southern end, on the bottom end, close to King Street, so that it's basically 1.5 to 2-story building. So we put the higher portion of the building on the inside of the property, so not to impact the neighborhood at all.
Right. I have a little bit of an image, one of the last images. But the images, this is sort of coming up from
Before
county.
you move on, can I just ask quickly, maybe I just missed this. Well, where's the culinary program?
Culinary is, I did neglect to say, as you come through the administration, you do have the restaurant over here. So it's secure from the rest of the facility with doors here. And so the culinary program is servicing that restaurant cafe area here. So
that's
the rest,
first floor.
the culinary is right off of the commons, and it's in direct proximity to the kitchen and servery.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So just the image coming up from county, you have some signage because of the Norwalk High School 4-story, and the main entrance is in the background on the right here. It's intended to sort of have an outdoor cafe. You can see just a little bit of the cafe entrance into this little courtyard area that's going to be further developed and talked about further with the staff, but that's necessarily the intent at the moment. This is an image from the parking, the north parking lot. You can see the 4-story and the 3-story wing on the left and the right respectively, and then just a bit of the main entry with these with the media center structure. It's a bit over contrast relative to the windows being so clear. Need to put some tint on that to be able to see the forms a little bit better based on the sunlight that we have. But coming around the corner, this is sort of the bus drop off that we have, sort of open-ended courtyard funnels directly into the cafeteria commons area. In this commons area, I forgot to mention is 3 stories high. So it goes up to, well, let's say a bit of a mezzanine level. So you're able to look over, look down onto it and have a bit more seating. That's the intent of the space there. And it actually pops up into the 3rd floor. So you actually have some glass. It's intended to be sort of a dynamic volume. We'll have some images later on in the process, but it's a dynamic volume in that it has a lot of layers to it. So it's not just a central core. It actually sort of overlaps each other. So it has that dynamic presence. And this is what Alan was talking about. So you have the natatorium, which is a little bit of a low structure on the left-hand side with the sort of an entry to, I guess, the back of the music wing. In the center, and then you have sort of the music volumes, the chorus and the band room off to the right-hand side. You can see a little bit of the theater in the backgrounds, but these are sort of the lower height, with the Norwalk High School being the highest, around 62 feet, and the stage house is about 50 feet high in comparison. So as you get back here, you're probably 35 to 40 feet relative to some of these clear stories that happen in the chorus, and try to get some light deeper into the building. And then just a shot from the field. Again, this is about a 25, 30-foot grade. So we're actually putting the grandstands within the hill. You're actually able to walk down, and actually off onto the right-hand side here is the concession building, and then the far left-hand side is the field house, just to give some understanding of where people need to walk. So the athletes would actually go on the east side of the site, and the fans would go on to the west side of the site, trying to keep them separate. But there's accessibility down into this concession stand area, and you can see it's actually elevated a little bit above the field to kind of give you another view of the field, another perspective than just the grandstands, either being home grandstands or the visitors grandstands behind us. And that was it for me. Adam, if you wanted to go into yours. If anybody had any questions, I'm sorry.
Scott, can you quickly just talk a little bit about natural light? I think that was either Councilwoman Ayers or Smith's. They brought it up, I think, at the last land use meeting.
Yes, well, in terms of natural light, maybe starting with the natatorium, there's specific glass that we would want to design. Right now, we're looking at Frick glass, so it's kind of like skylight glass to reduce or eliminate the reflections upon the pool. We also want to introduce that a bit into some of the clear story aspects. You can see a little bit here where you have the auxiliary gym. So you have the auxiliary gym, the choral room, even at that 3rd floor for the commons that I was talking about. That's clear story. So we want to introduce as much natural light as high up as we can, but we want to filter the light. We don't want direct sunlight because that provides contrast problems, and it's the intent is to basically help reduce a little bit of the electrical load in terms of the lighting. So this would augment a little bit of the lighting. We are also anticipating things that are called solar tubes. So that would be basically filtered light that brightens up a space. They kind of look like skylights, but they use reflectors to be able to increase the brightness depending on whether or not the tubes have curves or turns within them. But in terms of every classroom is certainly has natural light. And we tried to do that for most of the offices too, to try to get them outbound as much as possible.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, is this considered what your final design will look like, or is this? I mean, what is this we're seeing? Is this
this is the idea of what the materials would be like and what the design is looking like, giving the massing of the project. Final by no means, in terms of we still have to go through various stages, but in terms of the massing and the look of the building, we do have to go through material color selection. So some of those, depending on what would be available from particular manufacturers, those still need to be picked.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll turn it over to Adam.
Okay, I guess my first question is, can someone allow me to present since I don't have that option currently?
You're just still attendee, Adam?
Yeah, right now it's I'm allowed to talk, but it doesn't have an option for me to request control of the screen for presentation.
Jim, do you know if we can do that? If not, I can go through the PDF.
Yep.
Yeah, Scott, do you have the PDF?
Yep. One moment.
Thank you.
We can't let him share a screen?
Apparently, he's not a
Panelist?
panelist.
Can we make Adam a panelist? I'm not sure who's here from IT.
It looks like they're having an audio issue, whoever's here for the city, because
yeah. All right, maybe, there we go.
I could give you that, Adam. It's not as good as the
That would be
PowerPoint.
perfectly fine if you want to make that a little bit bigger for everybody. So I did provide Scott with the PDF, so we did have a backup plan just in case.
Good.
So.
Good.
Perfect.
There is a presentation view, but I don't know how well it would be. Never used it before in this, but if you wanted to start, Adam.
Sure. So thank you everybody for your time. My name is Adam Duke from Van Zomba Engineers, and this is a continuation from our last discussion regarding alternative energy options and solutions for the new Norwalk High School and P-Tech Norwalk campus. Scott, if you want to go next slide, we can start getting right into it so we don't burn up too much time. Just to go over what our primary systems and design goals were. Obviously, one thing that facilities, really wanted to work on this was feasibility. We want to make sure this project and the systems we do design for it can be feasibly designed and implemented for this building. Simplistic control and maintenance. We want to make sure that any system that we are going to provide isn't going to be so complex that it's going to require any kind of specialty training in the sense that it's going to be overly complex to control and maintain. We want to have an accessible building as well as an easily controlled building for occupant comfort and sustainability. Program space, obviously that was a key one here. Norwalk does have a robust program requirement that we like to make sure we can maintain for this. So we try to minimize our mechanical space requirements where possible. Energy efficiency and carbon emissions is obviously always a key that we try to look to increase energy efficiency and reduce our carbon emissions where possible. And as well as budget, the budget is always in the back of our mind. We don't want to be recommending systems that we already know are going to, fall off the way if we can't make this work. So budget's always a key concern. Next slide, please. So going right into alternative energy options we did consider as part of this project. There's about 5 of them. One main one, obviously, is photovoltaic PV solar for both roof mounted as well as grade and or parking structure mounted. Geothermal as well as ground source heat pumps, wind harvesting, cogeneration, or otherwise a cogen plant, which you may be familiar with the current school, as well as fuel cells. So just to go over our base HVAC systems that we proposed, we are proposing a VRF system or variable refrigerant system with heat recovery and an ERV or an energy recovery ventilation system. VRF obviously stands for variable refrigerant flow. ERV is energy recovery. DOAS, which would be a version of an ERV, is a dedicated outdoor air unit. And this is a system we are providing for classrooms, administrative areas, and office spaces. And I'll get into a little bit more of a description on the next slide once we get past this. The remaining spaces, which are typically large occupied spaces like the auditoriums and gymnasiums, we're proposing packaged DX cooling units on the roof with gas heating. And then the natatorium, we are proposing utilizing a packaged DX or direct expansion pool conditioning unit, which has the option for the pool water heating, which as you're dehumidifying or cooling the air, the rejected heat from that process gets utilized as free reheat to maintain the pool water temperatures. So just a brief description of what a VRF and the RV system is. Variable refrigerant system or variable refrigerant flow system is a single circuit type of system with a roof mounted condensing unit, which feeds refrigerant to a multitude of different zone boxes. What that does is, with a heat recovery system that we're also proposing, allows you to efficiently simultaneously heat and cool separate zones, providing increased heating and cooling and humidity control, as well as individual set points for each indoor unit, which allows for individual comfort control. This is very key in a classroom environment, considering that depending on the teachers and the students and the type of the season, one classroom on one exposure versus one classroom on another exposure may have two different conditions that need to be met. And especially in a shoulder season when your heating plant may normally be down, that is a challenge. It's always a concern. With this type of system, the heat recovery option that's built into it allows you to have one zone on one end of the building and one of the classroom space be heating and the other one be in cooling without any additional energy required. So I want to go on to the next slide. This is just a brief overview of what some of the indoor types units look like. Ones that you would see took like a typical diffuser. You can also get them which we're proposing for this is a ducted unit that you would not see. The key to these items is that they are very shallow, which allows for minimal above ceiling requirements, which is much better than a typical air conditioning system for the space, which allows for higher ceilings and a lower floor to floor. Next slide, please. In conjunction with the VRF system, for ventilation air or breathing air for the zones, we're proposing using energy recovery ventilators. What this does is, as you bring in fresh air from the outside, there's an energy recovery cube that's within the unit that allows to take the warmer, I'll call it stale air from the building, run it through the energy recovery cube, and it pulls that heat or cooling energy off of that air without actually mixing the air streams to preheat or pre-cool the air that's going into the space. So it tempers the air that we're going to be utilizing for our breathing zone. What makes this system a little bit different than a typical rooftop system that you would consider is that this is sized only for the ventilation air requirements, which is about 20% of the typical conditioning air requirement for a building. This means that our shaft sizes going from floor to floor are greatly reduced. Our duct sizes going from floor to floor are greatly reduced. And also because of the smaller size ductwork, cost is reduced as well. Next slide, please. So benefits in our area system, I pretty much ran through them quick, but aside for code required ventilation air for smaller systems, continuous fresh air to the building, the air that's being brought in is always 100% outdoor air. It's not mixed with return air like a typical VAV system is. That also allows, and this is something that's been key lately, is the ability to purge a building during unoccupied hours to ensure the building has fresh, clean air at all times. When the conditions are adequate outside, low humidity and whatnot, there's a desire sometimes to be able to purge the building and just run the outdoor air unit without running the conditioning units. And that allows you to purge the air through the building and make sure that in the morning you have fresh, clean air, the building's been purged and you're ready to go. That's not possible with your typical air conditioning system that you would normally have. Energy efficient, again, with the fan, all you're doing is you're pulling the air through and using the energy recovery cube to preheat or pre-cool the air. And enhanced filtration options are available for infectious disease mitigation like MERV 13 up to MERV 18 filtration as well. For the natatorium area, again, as we discussed, we're providing a dedicated pool conditioning unit. This will be roof mounted as well to try and minimize any mechanical room space. As the pool area is being dehumidified through this unit, the heat energy created from the process is rejected to a dedicated loop, which then allows you to maintain the pool water temperature. So essentially, if you didn't use that option, what would happen is you'd have to reject that heat to atmosphere anyway. This type of system for natatoriums allows you to capture that heat rejection, capture that energy, and utilize it to effectively keep the water temperate. This allows you to not need a normal use of an external heating source like a separate boiler or gas heater during normal operation. Next slide. So this is just kind of a brief picture of how that works. So as your air is moving through the coil and then gets cooled and then reheated to dehumidify, that energy or heat that's being pulled off is then sent through a heat exchanger, and the water flows in and flows out and preheats that air, or preheats the water, I apologize. And this allows not only for modulating reheat to make sure you have steady, precise control of the conditions of the pool, precise dew point control, which is very critical for a pool area, but it also meets our ASHRAE 62.1 ventilation standards, and you also get enhanced economizer for cooling and dehumidification. Next slide, please. So as we discussed all the proposed options that we're going through, one of the things that we did here is we tried to minimize our mechanical requirements as well as find systems that would be most efficient and best suited for the spaces as we go forth. What this did is kind of limit what we had for the possibilities for alternative energy options. So we went through them and analyzed them as they would apply. So what we do have as recommended would be our photovoltaic or PV and solar, and the ones not recommended would be the geothermal, wind harvesting, cogeneration, and fuel cells. Next slide. So this is just a brief overview of the roof mounted PV. This is not the building. This is just an example of what a full roof of PV would look like on a typical school. You have two options of roof attached for any pitched roofs, which I don't think we have many here, and then self-ballasted for the flat roofs, which is what we would typically see. Next slide. And then also grade mounted PV, typically parking area structures are best utilized for this because there are quite a bit of sports style facilities and whatnot in this space. There's not a lot of open area available. So the parking area is low hanging fruit to be able to place these parking structure PV areas. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief overview of what we could expect for some panel layouts in a pie in the sky, making sure we're trying to grasp every square inch that we can that's available for PV. What that equates to is approximately 2,289 panels with an output of approximately about 1,075 kW. And this is assuming, again, I want to mention this because this is an estimate. This is assuming an average of 470 watts per panel. That's right now. One thing we are seeing is almost every day, panel efficiencies are growing and growing and growing. So this average could increase by the time the school is completed and ready for PV if this option is chosen. Next slide. And this is what an overall look would be for if you decided again to maximize your PV structures for parking. Again, this approximates to approximately 2,246 panels, same output about 1,055 kW and using the same 470 watt panel. So this is a brief overview of what we've calculated. Again, I highlighted the key areas to understand here. 335,000 square feet approximately, average of 12 watts a square foot is what we typically see for power usage. So KWs consumed annually for this style school is approximately, let's call it 4 million kilowatt hours. Utilizing parking lot and roof structured PV, we can capture approximately 2,557,740 kilowatt hours, which equates to approximately 64% of your total consumption annually, which is pretty significant. Doing a base cost estimate based on today's dollars, and again, I say this is today's dollars, parking lot structure PV typically costs around $3.75 a watt, which has grown about $1.50 since a year and a half ago. Same thing with the roof mounted PV, it's at around $2.5 a watt. Again, that's grown about $1 since about a year and a half ago. So again, ROM costs for total install, you're looking at, if you decide to go with both of these options, and this is if you're going with an ownership option, is approximately $6.6 million for all the PV. But the couple things I want to bring up is your annual grid offset, which, if you're paying for the power, your typical power that you'd be paying for is around $430,000 a year. The payback, strictly by looking at these numbers, is 18 years for parking lot and 12 years for roof mounted. Now, that is without any incentives. And I say that without any incentives at this point because, once again, Eversource or the utility companies, their incentives change daily. What I can say, if we want to move on to the next slide quickly, there are incentives in play right now. Again, they are changing, where you can either sell all your production to Eversource at a certain rate and then buy back a negotiated rate with them, or you can also get a federal tax credit. Again, this has to be verified for municipalities and state projects, but approximately 26% is available for a federal tax credit on PV projects. So if, for instance, if we just assume that 20% tax credit is available by the time this may or may not get approved, you are looking at reducing your cost probably by about $1.7 million, which can bring your payback for the parking structures down to 15 years and roof mounted PV down to 10 years.
If I could just jump in for a moment, I just want to note from the members of the committee that we do use a third party right now to provide the solar panels on our buildings at no out-of-pocket cost to the city.
Yeah, so that's a good point, which I was going to bring up in my next slide. This was just an RM cost if you decide you wanted to own the solar panels. If we want to move on to the next slide quickly, what I think you typically use is a PPA or a power purchase agreement where there's no capital outlay from you as a city, but what you do is have a negotiated rate from a third party that you purchase your green energy from. And it's typically, I think, between a 15 and 20-year contract. So that's very common for this type of project where you have a PPA with a 15 to 20-year contract. You sign a renewable energy contract where a project developer will provide you with the panels, the equipment, the infrastructure to support the solar. And then all the electricity that it generates is sold to the wholesale electricity market. And then the client, you as a city, would pay a fixed amount for that green energy, which typically ranges from 13 cents a kilowatt hour to 21 cents a kilowatt hour. In general, I'll say that in general, it's usually less than your current utility rate. I will say that it's probably going to remain that, since our utility rates never go down, they always go up. So you're more apt to still have a less utility rate by utilizing this. There are pros, obviously, and cons to every type of system. Obviously, the big pro is no capital outlay. So case in point, that $6.6 million that I spoke about earlier, you don't have to pay that. You purchase a reduced rate power from this green power that's being produced, and all the risk and the guaranteed rates are on the third party developer for this system. Obviously, are some cons. The cons are, after the contract of 15 to 20 years, the developer could choose not to renew the agreement and either remove or sell the solar equipment that is on your roof. It's very uncommon. Typically, they would just try to sell it to you for a reduced rate so you maintain it. And then green power rates can fluctuate sometimes where you don't have a significant offset from your current utility power, but that's very rare. Next slide, please. Moving forward, geothermal and ground source not recommended for this project. Main point because of that is that we are not proposing hydronic systems for or baseboard heating, hot water piping, space heating, so on and so forth for this project. Because our main classroom admin areas, P-TECH, we're proposing a variable refrigerant system. There's no hot water or chill water piping required. The cooling and heating happens through that refrigerant system all on its own. There's also another high first cost to implement this typically, and this is always growing as well. Geothermal wells cost around $30,000 per well to install. If we're looking at this globally from the size of the school and just the load alone, that could equate to approximately 175 to 180 wells, which for this would approximate $4 to $5 million additional dollars for this project. But I think more importantly is the real estate required. I think as you looked at the schematic design, the presentation that Scott had put forward, KBA put forward, there's not a lot of outdoor real estate available any longer, as well as your robust education program. You have a robust sports program, and there's really not a lot of real estate left to be able to put these geothermal or ground source wells. And if you were to utilize, let's say, parking structure PV, that even eliminates even more area you could potentially put if you want to try and put under the parking space. And again, mechanical requirements, if we were to utilize hydronic systems with geothermal, with the pumps and what goes with that, we'd require approximately another 4,000 square feet of mechanical space for this building. And in working with KBA and Norwalk, educational programming is something that's very critical to the success of this project. And reducing the mechanical spaces gave the educational program a lot more flexibility with this facility. So the systems we've been proposing and utilize reduction in ceiling plenum height as well as large chases within the 3 and 4 story structures. So we thought the systems we were proposing would be more beneficial given these type parameters for the site and the building construction. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown is why we're trying to reduce our mechanical footprint. Next slide, please. Wind harvesting, again, another one that's not recommended for this project. 2 main points is, efficiency for the system. You need to have an average wind speed of about approximately 12 miles an hour for a wind turbine to be efficient to produce power to make the payback applicable. Long-term average wind in Norwalk for the past 10 years is approximately 8.5 miles an hour. Short-term is 8.5 miles an hour, and your short-term gusts range between 12.5 and 20. So just from a wind speed alone, wind harvesting doesn't seem to be a viable option. Next slide, please. And then another one I think we can all relate to is a lot of opposition from residents. Obviously, wind turbines can tend to be very unsightly between being 50 and 200 feet tall. So there's generally a lot of opposition in residential areas for these types of systems. So that's one of the main. Also quite costly for the user without state grants to provide the funding. If the school chose to, I think the state still offers a Wind for Schools initiative, which is more directed towards education of wind harvesting. So you have like 1 or 2 small wind turbines just for an educational standpoint, but it really wouldn't have anything to do with energy reduction. So that doesn't apply. Next slide. Cogeneration is another one not recommended for this project. Again, as we spoke for earlier, we're not proposing to utilize any water style heating systems, so no hydronic heating. And cogen can be a very efficient way to produce energy and hot water as long as the 2 loads are balanced. So as you create that electricity, you want to try and use that rejection from creating that electricity to reject to a hot water source. Because we're not utilizing hydronic heating for this, that one water source goes away. We're also proposing to employ a packaged pool conditioning unit that utilizes the waste energy from that unit to maintain the pool water temperature, so that source would go away. So we're left with a domestic water load, which we're trying to reduce that water load as it stands and be more efficient with either instantaneous electric heat or small gas heaters. And that water load would also not be consistent. So we wouldn't have a consistent load to be able to throw the waste heat to, which would make a cogen system overall inefficient, and we'd just be dumping a lot of that waste heat out to atmosphere. Next slide. Fuel cells, another one not recommended for this project, and it really comes down to cost and payback. Lately, there's been a big push from a lot of vendors to try and utilize fuel cells because they tote that it's a very efficient way to convert gas to hydrogen and make clean electricity. But there is a significant cost to make that work with not a lot of incentive. Fuel cell system size for this school will be approximately a 2,000 kW system. Overall, at a cost of 0.095 per kW, we're looking at a $6.1 million investment for installation costs, as well as an $85,000 a year conservative estimate for fuel cell maintenance. And that typically happens in a 16 to 20 year contract with a fuel cell manufacturer, where you don't own these fuel cells, you essentially lease them and then have to also maintain them. There's also downtime associated with this, where you still have to purchase power from the grid. But a realistic payback is approximately 28 years for a fuel cell system, which when you typically utilize a 20-year plus or minus life cycle for equipment, your payback is far exceeding what your life cycle is of the equipment, which doesn't make it a viable solution. Next. So just looking at this overall, and I know this really wasn't a goal, but we want to still touch on it, is sustainability and net zero, and how does that apply? So there's two ways to look at net zero. Net zero energy, which is when your net zero energy facility is one which all the site energy production, all your site energy production is equal to or greater than the energy you're consuming on an annual basis. So effectively, you would have to assume you have an all-electric system, which includes your domestic hot water, your heating, your cooling, everything would be 100% electric. And then you would also have to try and generate all of that power on site, which typically would happen between wind and solar. By looking at what we proposed for your solar in the previous few slides, we're trying to maximize that as it stands. There are situations where that may get reduced depending on how things get shifted around, but there's not a lot of area for growth for additional solar, maybe a few panels here and there, and that could be addressed later on. But we don't see a way that you could possibly produce all your energy from on-site without purchasing off-site power as well. There's also another way to look at this, which is net zero carbon or carbon neutral, which is a very typical way to apply net zero, which means you're meeting all your facility energy usage with energy sources that are carbon free, or purchasing carbon offsets to account for the carbon emissions that you do utilize from fossil fuels. So what this typically means is you don't have to do physical changes to the types of systems you have, but you want to try and address it in the beginning, where your building itself is high efficient, tight materials. And then we can right size and shrink our systems down as much as possible, which we are already trying to do as part of this project, which is what we do as a baseline. What that allows us to do as we right size that is we now are not utilizing as much energy as we may typically use, and we can try and reduce our fossil fuels as well. So next slide, please. So there's significant overlap between the two net zero energies, but typically what you want to do is to decrease your energy consumptions, which will put you on a path towards net zero and carbon neutrality in the future. So reducing our electrical consumption and natural gas is a key towards going net zero, but it's something that needs to be developed as a roadmap for the next X amount of years to determine if this is a goal that Norwalk wants to meet, and how do you get there by that certain time frame. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for the Norwalk School? As we discussed earlier, as part of this project, as a baseline, net zero hasn't been discussed as a requirement for the school, but it's definitely a path that a city must commit to prior to the start of a project. They want to try and implement it early on. That being said, KBA and Benzome are already working towards putting the school on this path to the best that we can, given the constraints in the budget, because we are meeting the requirements for high performance schools, which already puts the school as the systems on a high efficient path. We're looking at high performance building construction. There's a lot of natural light, and we're utilizing daylight dimming controls to reduce the lighting requirements. The primary heating and cooling classroom systems and administrative systems are already all electric, high efficient VRF systems being proposed with heat recovery on both the ventilation and the cooling and heating side. And the larger areas are single zone rooftop units with natural gas, but they are high efficient natural gas systems, which would utilize very little natural gas as long as we can right size that equipment to make it small. And all the water heating systems are going to be either electric or high efficient gas where we cannot utilize electric heating systems. So while net zero carbon neutral may not be an immediate goal for this project, we are currently designing with the future in mind, and where the potential to reach net zero carbon neutral goals are attainable in the future. Next slide, please. So the first path is making sure we have an energy efficient building, and then installing the proposed PV systems, whether it's school bought or utilizing them from a PPA standpoint, can reduce the energy, on-site energy by 64%. That's a significant step towards going net zero, and this will significantly reduce the energy carbon footprint and hence the building's total carbon footprint. And that's all I got, and I apologize if I went on and on and on, but I tried to cover a lot in a short amount of time. So please, if you have any questions.
I couldn't. So what else could we be? It sounds like we're not going to get to be net zero energy usage. What else could or should we be thinking about in this building? I mean, for example, green roof. I mean, I guess that doesn't apply because you have the solar there, but is there something else we could be doing?
Well, again, one of the items that we were looking at doing, and it's tough without getting full into DD, is potentially going with as many all electric domestic water heating systems that we can. An option for that is potentially utilizing instantaneous water heaters in some of the toilet groups versus large tank style heaters. This removes a large electrical or gas component and puts it into an all electric standpoint, which can potentially reduce the energy footprint and get you more towards an all electric. Maximizing PV again is another one. We looked at potentially trying to utilize heat pump coils in the rooftop units. The downfall of that is a heat pump coil cannot produce the amount of heat required to sustain the air temperature in the Northeast without producing a secondary electric heating coil in the system, which almost triples the energy required to serve that unit as opposed to just utilizing a gas burner in that unit. So that was not a viable solution either. So it's the key component to net zero is really making sure that we can have a building that is going to be as efficient as possible, as tight as possible, so we can shrink our systems down to the smallest possible. And the least amount of energy that you're going to use and the most amount of PV that you can put on site to generate energy, the closer you're going to get to net zero. And again, there's net zero energy and net zero carbon. As you approach net zero carbon, again, you're utilizing all the same steps, and where you don't meet the carbon requirements, you can purchase carbon offsets to get you closer or to achieve that net zero goal. So you already are on that path. It's just where we can make the building tighter and make it more efficient and right size our equipment is what we have to do here.
Ms. Alterman?
Thank you. I just had a question. I didn't see in any of the plans anything about like industrial composting, and I'm wondering, since this school seems like it's focusing on a lot of the aspects of sustainability, has that been discussed at all?
I can say from Van Zelm's standpoint, I'm not sure that's been discussed.
My question, I think, is that an NPS decision, or is that like a city building question? I don't actually know who would be responsible for that if the school decided to implement that within, like, their food services or classrooms, things like that, if that's curriculum based or city based.
I don't know how to answer that because I think that's a programming thing. This site is very limited. If you look at a site plan before, there's really not a lot of space left after we put this building and try to capture all the facility. So space is a substantial concern here. In terms of composting, cafeteria, food waste and stuff like that, that I really fall under the Board of Education into how they operate the facility in terms of recycling and as well as composting. But I'm not sure that we have a space on site to do composting.
Okay, thank you.
If I can go back to the comment that was made about, having instant hot water. So if that's something that is more efficient, why haven't you guys been looking at it?
I think most of the time in maintenance, because every time you have faucet, you have another unit. So instead of maintaining a hot water heater that support, like, let's say three locations, three wings of the building, you have 3 hot water heaters. Every sink, well, generally speaking, every bathroom or multiple sink will have 1 water heater. So, and these are small equipment. The tendency to break and fail, it's a little bit higher. It's a little harder to maintain. So that's one. But then, when you have a system that actually circulates water around the building, it loses a lot of heat as you travel around the building. So recirculating and stuff like that. So the energy of pumping water around is one issue. The other one is that maintaining the heat loss in the system is another issue. So it's a balancing maintenance versus energy consumption.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions before we move on? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh, Barbara.
Yeah. This is going back to the panels over the parking.
Yes.
And you may have touched upon this, but if you could just reiterate for me, like, how much more energy will that produce opposed to just having it on the roof?
Coincidentally, it's almost the exact amount of kW as what we would be putting on the roof. So, so your kilowatt hours for parking lot would be approximately 1,200,066 kilowatt hours, and your roof is approximately 1,200,090 kilowatt hours. So they're very close to one another. The key is the cost of installation. Because of COVID and these rising steel costs and concrete costs, we've gone from like a $2 per watt for a parking lot structure mounted PV to $3.75 a watt. And upwards of $4 in some instances. It's almost doubled, which is is a concern. Now, again, this is a fluid market, and we've seen wood and steel go up and down. There's no telling where this is going to be in a year. Could be more, could be less. It's really a balance of parking, how much the cost of installation goes. Availability of solar panels is another issue right now. Getting solar is very difficult just because of the materials required. Because a lot of the manufacturing for solar panels is overseas, which I think we all know right now is very difficult to make anything happen. But again, in a year or so, that could all change. But the other key is the incentive. Whether you go with a PPA or you decide to buy it on site yourself, what's going to be available for an Eversource incentive is going to be the main driver. And right now, your tax credits are, upwards of 26% for a federal investment for a tax credit, which is significant. I mean, that's almost $2 million. That's, of this system. But then you have other incentives, which really only pay back if you're able to generate more power than you're consuming. But it really comes down to the cost of it to make it work. Now, a payback of 12 years and 18 years for solar is not that unreasonable, considering. I'm not going to say it's great, obviously, because $4 a watt is ridiculous. But at the same time, it's, we've seen it grow to be 25 years in some cases, which makes it not sustainable.
And I think there's a couple other things we need to look at. One is that tax credit, because we are a municipality, we do not get tax credit. That's why I do PPA, so that we lease the system, and then the developer will capture the tax credit. But at the same time, it's because they are developers, they do charge a fee, but that cost is never really defined for the city, because that's part of the trade secret kind of thing. The profit margin is very hard to determine. So as much as you can capture tax credit for a PPA, there's also many laws because we hire another company to develop it instead of city buying for it. On the other hand, if we do as a capital project, I believe we are eligible for state reimbursement for it. So there's a balance of numbers that we got to look at.
Yep.
And also the other thing too, we look at depreciation and as well as life of these systems. Technology continue to change. So 20 year for solar system. I mean, I don't know how long these things last, and also technology keep changing. Whether the new stuff is actually better than the old stuff. In terms of energy generation, it's probably better. But in terms of reliability after 20 years, I mean, is the system, generally speaking, need to throw it away and buy a new one? I don't know enough to talk about it, but those are things that we got to look at. Yeah, and then right now we have 3 schools that under PPA, and all of them are 20 years. So I mean, there's a buyback provisions and things like that. And the solar developer, actually, the way these PPA are structured, it's actually like similar to a mortgage. There's secondary markets they trade these on.
Correct.
So therefore, it's an interesting thing. It's again, we still have to evaluate which way it's beneficial to the city, because even the state reimbursement, we have to spend another $6 million out of our budget to do this, even though the state may reimburse 80% of it, but still it raises our total project cost up. So there's a lot of things we need to look at. I don't have the answer to them. It's just take more time to look at.
Do you know what, I apologize, now I'm asking questions, what the rate is on average that you're paying when you're utilizing the third party?
Yeah, we pay about 6 cents a kilowatt.
6 cents a kilowatt is what you pay?
Yeah. The reason being is that we broke down the rates in the 2 components. One is delivery and one is generation.
Yep.
So yeah, generation, we're looking at somewhere around 11 or 12, I think it's 12 point something cents per kilowatt hours. So the system we're doing now, it's we pay between 5.5 cents to 6.5 cents, somewhere around there. Depends on type of construction and stuff like that. But beyond that, we don't have too much information. Again, it's more of the developers, like a better trade secret. We don't know how much it costs them to build it. We don't know how much tax credit they get. And there's also maintenance components to this too. When we lease the system, the developer actually provide maintenance.
Yes.
So if we build it ourselves, there's a maintenance cost that we have to put into the equation. It doesn't require a lot of repair and stuff, but there are downtime potentially too. So
yeah,
so
it's risk versus reward. Do you want to absorb all the benefit from the 64% of your power is being generated on site, and you only have to now pay for, let's say, 35% of that, or let them have all the risk, let them have all the maintenance, and you just absorb a lower rate while knowing you're still purchasing green energy? It's definitely a delicate balance you have to play with, and being a municipality, that's definitely one you have to look at.
David.
Thank you, Chairman Livingston. On the parking lot solar idea, have there ever been any studies done that are a cost benefit analysis showing the 25-year lifespan of the solar, and then the cost of the structure, the maintenance, upkeep of that? I mean, it's one thing to put it on the roof of the building. We're building the building because we want the building.
Yes.
And we can utilize the space to put that there, but there's a cost to building those structures in a parking lot. There's a cost to upkeep on them. What does that do to that $1.2 million worth of generation that we're talking about over the course of a 25-year? Are there any studies that have ever shown that?
Not from a maintenance standpoint on my end. I know we have a basic installed cost and what that life cycle or what that cost benefit looks like from a payback standpoint. I will say that there hasn't been enough parking structure PV around from a 20 to 25 year standpoint to get what I'm going to consider adequate data. I can get, there's probably studies that have been done to say what the breakdown is and what we can safely assume. But there hasn't been enough around for me to get adequate data, but I can, if that's something I can absolutely start looking at.
I'd be curious to know, when you're talking about 64% production, what does that do over that 25 years? Does it drop? Do we lose 4%? Do we lose 8%? Because that's a cost that would have to be figured in as well, I would think. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, any other questions, comments before we move on? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Item 5, review recommendation for independent testing lab for Cranberry School and for recommendation to Common Council for action. Authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Special Testing Laboratories, Inc. for materials testing and field inspection services for the Cranberry Elementary School new project. for a total not to exceed $90,000. Account noted. Have a motion? Mr. Hooverman, thank you. Alan, this is just a normal testing thing, right? Muted. Alan, muted.
So sorry. This is very typical of our projects. We need the independent testing lab to do all the concrete testing, material testing, and all that stuff. We typically go RFP out and we get unit pricing and we make certain assumption. I mean, last month, I think you look at something that we estimate a little too low. So this time we had a little bit higher. So hopefully we don't have to come back, keep asking, coming back for the same thing. Anyway, so we got unit prices. We determined that with purchasing department, we determined that special testing laboratory that gave us the most favorable pricing. And we want to set amount not to exceed $90,000.
And we've used them before?
Yes, we do. There's only like 3 of them. Well, yeah, we got proposals regularly from I think there's one company in Norwalk that we use. Yeah, we used them before.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Unanimous. Thank you. Item 6, review recommendation for program management services for school construction projects. Refer recommendation to Common Council for action. A, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute an agreement with Construction Solutions Group LLC to provide program management services for Jefferson School Improvement Project for a total not to exceed $64,584.75. Account noted. B, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute an agreement with Construction Solutions Group LLC to provide program management services for new Cranberry School project for a total not to exceed $379,987.50. Account noted. C, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute an agreement with Construction Solution Groups LLC to provide program management services for the new Norwalk High School project for a total not to exceed $1,148,110.50. Account noted. And D, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute an agreement with Construction Solutions Group LLC to provide program management services for the new South Norwalk School project for a total not to exceed $730,895. Account noted. Do I have a motion? Mr. Keegan, thank you. Alan?
Yeah, back about 5 years ago, the city underwent this program to renovate and build new schools.
Actually, Alan, I just wanted the records to note that Mr. Giuliani left the meeting. Just to be clear. All right, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, but 5 years ago, when the city, Board of Education and the city decided to move forward this plan to improve and build new schools for the community. At the time, specific projects weren't really identifying how much we want to fund, which project we want to fund at the time. So we ran our RFP. I believe we got 4 proposals, and through that process, we did interviews. We selected Jim's firm, Construction Solution Group, to provide a service. At the time, we only went out for one position, which is Jim's position. He's a part owner of the company, and and we're recognizing that as cities start funding different projects, we'll ask additional staffing as necessary to support those projects. Typically, it's about 1%, a little more than 1% of the cost of the project itself. So we executed a 5-year agreement with Jim's office, and we are by July 1st, I think 13th of this year, the 5 years will be up. So they've been managing these projects for us, including Ponus and Jefferson and Cranberry and on, and all the support we get from South North schools and everything else that we went through, and then Columbus School and things like that. So each project has its specific amount, and so with the ending of the about to end the contract between the city and Jim's company, we ran an RFP again. Jim's the only firm to submit a proposal to the city. It's not unusual in a sense, but it is unusual in a different way. There's probably maybe 3 or 4 companies in the whole state that does school construction, and I think a lot of times when a company is working with community, there are times that the other company doesn't, knowing that they are there, they don't want to waste time and submit a proposal because there's a working relationship already, it's continuation of the same project. But there are times they would purposely submit a low number just to mess things up a little bit. So again, different scenario, different market. For Fairfield County, is a little different from Hartford area. The competition is a little different. So in response to RFP, nobody else submitted except Jim. So in order for me, so in my perspective, Jim's office has been providing very excellent service to the city. So quality of the service is not in question. So it's really come to the financial side. So previously, when we went RFP, the pricing was competitive for the last 5 years. So I using that as a reference and looking at the number they submitted now, it's basically a 5% increase per year. And some of these are multiple years. Norwalk High School is another 6 years out. That's why it's $1 million. So you got 1 year and a half more design and 5 year construction. So that's those are the numbers. And what's in front of you is requesting approval of a very project specific dollar amounts. And generally speaking, it's a 5% increase per year, which includes a little bit of when he first submitted a proposal, there's no administrative fee in it. I think that adds about, I think like 25 cents or 30 cents an hour to the hourly rate, which isn't a lot. So anyway, so again, what's in front of you is just approving his extent. We are not extending a contract, really new contract. The reason being is that the state like to see these project dollar amount very specific to each project instead of lumping it together. And now they got to figure out, divide it back out again. So it's a four separate actions.
And just to be clear that his fees are reimbursable, right? But per the reimbursement rate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Norwalk High School, 80%, and for South Norwalk School would be 60%. And the other two places based on the Cranberry, based on the current rate, which is 22%.
Any questions, discussion? I mean, my experience has been great with these guys. And as Alan said, Alan's the real test. He's been very happy with him. So. Okay, no questions, discussion? Okay, call for vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Alan, miscellaneous discussion items, and I'm hoping they're none.
None.
Any motion?
Is this Tom's last meeting with land use?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we gotta bring some cupcakes or something.
Virtual cupcakes. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure having you on the committee. And all committees.
On all committees.
Thank you.
We're gonna miss you.
Yeah.
I'm only going to miss Alan's aquarium.
Call in, Alan. All right.
Very good. If I go to Florida, I'll visit you someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a motion? Anybody?
Yeah, motion.
Okay, lots of motions. Pick one. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alan. Everybody have a good night.
Night, everyone.